Do you have a writing process? Has anybody ever asked you that? Well, people ask writers that all the time, and especially if you are, a well-known, famous author, right? What is your writing process? And I've been to multiple conferences where people will ultimately ask that question of the writer who is speaking or on a panel. And I always find it interesting because do writers have a writing process? Absolutely. Is it what makes them successful? No. So let's talk about the writer's writing process today. Welcome to the Amante channel. If we are just meeting, I am a women's fiction author and also here on Fridays to give you some writing tips that could help you to write your novel. So let's talk today about the writing process itself, right? So what is the writing process? Every writer has one, and it's nothing special. So let's talk about what it is. Okay, so I'm going to give you the secret to every writer's writing process. And it's like this. The writing process it begins with pre-writing. We think about what we're going to write. We pre-write. Some of us will sketch things out. Some of us will outline things. Some of us will just think about it. Okay. After the writing process, what happens is we start to write the first draft. We write our first draft down. We get all the, the story kind of organized into sometimes a very detailed story, sometimes just sort of the bare bones of a story. Once we get that rough draft written, we actually go back and revise it, and we rewrite it multiple times, right? So we might rewrite it just once, we might rewrite it 10 times, but we go through the whole rewriting process, we go through an editing process, we finally have a final draft, and that is the writing process. That is every single author's writing process. Some of them may have a very short pre-writing period, some of them may have a very short rewriting period, but every author has the same writing process. So when a beginning writer asks established author, what is your writing process? First of all, the author has to think of something because they can't tell you what I just told you, because then it's like, well, really, that's what everybody does. Exactly, that's what everybody does. So what the writer is asking the author is, what is your secret, right? What do you do that's different from everybody else that gets you this amazing novel? That's what they really want to know, right? So the author who has been asked this question has to think of something, right? So they think, okay, what do I do that's different? Well, let me tell you about how I structure my time. So then they will go into, right, their morning routine and what they do and what they drink and where they sit and what candles they light and how they, how many hours they work, because they need to tell you how they structure their time. So their process is that they sit down every morning, they go for a run, they do this, and they tell you about how they structure their time. But again, that has nothing to do with the writing process. That has more to do with just structure, right? How they structure their time and also their habits. Some of them will meditate or, again, go on walks or walk their dog or have breakfast first. Those are all just habits and routines that they have that might help them get into the writing mode or writing, I don't know, habit or writing, to get into writing. But it has nothing to do with their process of actual writing. Something else that the authors will sometimes share is how they pre-write. So again, some of them will tell you about how they have extensive outlines, and some of them will tell you how, no, they just sit there and they start writing and they start to get a feel of their character and see how the story is going to develop. This is very much how I started writing when I first started writing, is I would need to get to know my character, and the only way I got to know my character was to actually put my character into scenes and see how the character behaved, right? And what the character's personality was like. So that's what I would do. But that, again, that's part of the pre-writing. Now, some of them might go into their research, right? So in order for me to write my book, I spent hours in research. I traveled to foreign countries to get to know the culture, or, they will talk to you about their research. And again, they're trying to answer that process question. What else do authors share? They share information about their workspace, right? This is how I set up my desk. This is where I sit. This is where I usually write. Sometimes I go here. Sometimes I go there. They will tell you about their work routine, their workspace, how it has to be laid out. But some people will talk about that, right? What is their workspace like? Important, but it's not the process of writing. So as you can see, in an attempt to answer that question, what writers will tell you is about their routines, what they like to do, how they feel comfortable, how they spend their time, how they set up their office, in order to explain to you, what they do, in order for you to get an idea of maybe what the magic, what the secret is, of which, of course, there is no secret other than the fact that they are amazing writers, right? That they actually write well, that they actually are able to craft stories that people are going to enjoy, that they're able to, plot, whether they plot or not, they're able to create a plot that is attractive to readers. So it's not a secret, it's not the process, it's just that they are amazing writers, right? They can tell a story well, and they've had, many of them, many years of practice, and that's what makes them an amazing writer. I like a quote that I read in The Guardian by George Sanders, where he tried to answer this question too, right? Of what is the writer process, or the writer's process? And he says something like to the effect of, well, it's really just very mysterious and too much of a pain in the ass for writers to be able to discuss truthfully. Because what is it? If they had to discuss it truthfully, they would say they pre-write, they write the rough draft, they edit that draft, and then they publish the draft. That is the process that they go through, that every writer goes through. So let's talk then about your writing process. It should feel kind of freeing to know that there is really no secret, right? That every author does go through the same process. So what that means is, for you, is that you need to develop what works for you, right? So when you think, okay, I need to go through these steps, and how I go through these steps becomes my writing process. How do I pre-write? What do I do to set up the story? And there are, right, many videos, many articles, many books on that part of writing, of pre-writing, of being, of either creating outlines, or of organizing, or of putting in, your main points. There's many ways that you can pre-write, or even not pre-writing, even just writing, right? Just sitting there and putting down your thoughts and seeing if a book starts to develop from that. So that is, again, one of the points that you're going to develop. And it doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter how you set up your desk. You can set it up however it's comfortable for you. You have the freedom really to create what works for you. You don't really want to borrow somebody else's creativity. You don't really want to do, follow the routines that another author has, because it might or might not work for you. Even when I'm in a different place, my routine is slightly different because the location is different. People may be getting up at certain times. Sometimes before, when my kids were in college, I had a certain routine that was really working well. Then when they came back from college and now they're there and they have their work schedules and things that are happening, and they're back in my house, and I like to cook for them. So sometimes, I will rearrange my schedule in order to make sure that I'm cooking at a time when most people can be there. So, that changes your routine. So you don't want to borrow somebody else's routine. You might not really be a morning person. You might not want to get up at 5 in the morning and go for a jog. So why bother asking what another writer does? Because it really doesn't matter. So as you develop your own habits, right, and you start, what gets you into your story, you can then decide, okay, well then how do I want to write? What time works best for me? Where do I want to sit? Where do I want to work? All of that you create yourself. So you're creating your own routines, your own habits, along your own time, your own process, if you want to call it that. Again, I don't feel that is the actual process. The process is going through the pre-writing, writing, editing, and publishing. That is the process. So you figure out how it works best for you. And don't worry about how other people do it. You can, definitely read it. I find it interesting to read what other authors do, just because I love writing and I love authors and I love books. So it's interesting for me just to read those things, but does it matter to my writing process? Absolutely not. It really doesn't. And I know that there is no secret to the way they write. So, it's just interesting reading for me when I want to read about what other people do, or the writers do. So I hope that this helps you at least think of the writing process a little differently, that it's just a process, right? And then you have to find what works for you. And if you're doing that, then you're going to be successful for you. You're going to write well for you, because you're following something that you're following a routine that is comfortable, that builds the most creativity for what you want to write, and also also you're not really worried about how other people are doing it. So I hope this helps. If it does, please hit the like and the share button and come back next week so that we can continue discussing writing and all the kind of cool things that go along with it. See you then.